Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Audible Live, and I am your host, Cecil Lammy, flying solo tonight because, well, it's late June and July. It's called vacation time across the National Football League, but I'm here ready to talk some fantasy football with you and excited to take your questions on our YouTube channel. Of course, youtube.com/footballguys, DOTCOM. Make sure to check us out there. Make sure to check out the Audible on Twitter, and make sure to follow along with Matt Waldman, Sigmund Bloom, Dr. Gene Bramall, as they're all out and about tonight. I am here to lock it down and go over the latest news and notes from around the National Football League with a fantasy tilt and a fantasy spin. So, of course, your comments, your questions are always welcome. I see Josh is in the live chat. Fantasy Fellowship is in there. Josh says, what's up? What's up, Josh? Right back at you. Any questions you guys want? I mean, this is the slow time in the National Football League, but there is still some news to get to. It's why you subscribe to our footballguys.com daily newsletter, where you can check the latest news and notes from around the NFL every day. And that's available at footballguys.com. And Narish, it only took about a minute to say it is a Broncos show. Michael Gonzalez says, yo, we will get to some Broncos talk, including an update on Chad Kelly. It is the partying season, but is Chad Kelly partying in the Mile High City? I've got your answer coming up a little bit later. Speaking of some cold pops, I'm going to have some cold pops on this show, at least one, while I sit here and talk fantasy football with y'all. And again, look forward to hearing your questions about whatever you want to know. And I'm going to go over some news and notes as well. So sit back, enjoy your cold pop like I'm going to, and let's talk some fantasy football. By the way, a great gift from a listener here. You can see this on the screen. This is a 50 caliber bullet that was sent to me, or was given to me by one of our veterans I met at a American Ninja Warrior event. And he turned it into a bottle opener. So anyway, pretty cool. Thank you all. It's great interacting with you guys whenever I see y'all out and about. Had a fantasy football draft at Fan Draft here in town in Denver. It's a great sports bar with a fantasy football angle. So you can check them out on Twitter at Fan Draft, and it's DRAUGHT. It's the English version of draft. So Fan Draft. Thank you for that. It was a lot of fun last night. Ready to talk some fantasy football with you. And, of course, Andrew chimes in with the first question of the night. How's DT been looking? I want to tell everyone out there, and it's been going around, but it needs to be emphasized. And remember this, because Demaryius Thomas is the centerpiece of the Broncos offense. Demaryius Thomas right now is, on the borderline for 110 catches. You'd say that, 1,300 yards, let's say 7 to 10, 12 touchdowns, something like that. That's what he's in for, and it's almost regardless of the quarterback situation, and here's why. The offense, in my opinion, is basically designed around him. We know that Mike McCoy's system is all about the dink and dunk, the short passing game to set up the long shots, and this is where Demaryius Thomas, when I talked to him at the Super Bowl, he was all cheesing. He was like Eric Studesville, man. He's all smiles. And I said, Demaryius, what's up? And this was after Mike McCoy was hired. And he says, I get my play back. And it made me think two things. First and foremost, cool, that's awesome. That's that wide receiver screen, the little bubble screen that he's talking about. And secondly, why in the hell didn't they run the play last year for Demaryius Thomas if it's his favorite play? But he gets it back this year. This is an offense that's going to feature the short passing game. Remember that if you want sneaky quarterback to play, and that's Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch. That's the most value that they'll have. There's other more valuable quarterbacks out there. But in terms of wide receivers, he's clearly got wide receiver one upside, and he's getting drafted right now. I'm going to look at current average draft position for wide receivers, because last night when I did that fan draft, which featured a bunch of people and fantasy football analysts, including Brad Evans, my man Yahoo Noise from Yahoo Sports, Demaryius Thomas is going in the end of the third round. And that's preposterous given the fact that he is going to be such a key piece and a key figure in that. Now, people may be timid on the quarterback situation, and I get that. I understand that. You have an inexperienced Paxton Lynch who all he wants to do is go long. You have a Trevor Siemian that'll put you to sleep because he just hits the short stuff and doesn't really do much downfield. At OTAs, I was at every Broncos practice that was open to the media. Trevor Siemian didn't have many passes over 10 yards. I'm not supposed to report the actual number, but it wasn't very many. So just keep that in mind if you're in any sort of yardage bonus leagues. They're not going to really attack down the field if Simeon's their quarterback, but what they are going to do is go after Demaryius Thomas early and often. So as the centerpiece of that, he's wide receiver 17 right now in 12-team PPR. He's easily got wide receiver 1 upside. And I was considering him. I was at the turn in a 12-team league last night. I went ahead and I went Michael Thomas and I went Amari Cooper. I thought coming back around I would be able to get Demaryius Thomas, even though it is in Denver. There was like some quarterbacks taken. It was 4 points for a touchdown pass, so I didn't take a quarterback until the 7th round. I got Ben Roethlisberger, very happy with that. So there were some interesting picks, some bad picks, and Demaryius didn't quite get back to me. He went like 4 picks before me. So in Denver, he went in the middle of the 3rd round. In most everywhere else, he's averaging to be taken at the end of the 3rd round with the likes of Alshon Jeffrey, Terrell Pryor, Jarvis Landry, etc. Demaryius Thomas has got touchdown potential. He's got the catches you want in a PPR league, and this offense, this is a guy they lean on. They're going to lean on him time and time again. So Demaryius Thomas, he's been looking good. He's been healthy. Something that last year you saw him as he went through practice last year, he'd sit there and hit on his hip like that. He would just like slam on his hip because it wasn't feeling right. And that's something that he injured himself on the 2nd play against Carolina in week 1. And he played through it all season long. So now Demaryius Thomas healthy, fresh, and ready to go for your fantasy squad. So if you can get him at the end of the 3rd round, consider yourself lucky and watch that ADP rise as I see more and more people on Twitter talking about Demaryius Thomas. Looks like Louis, or is it Lewis, says, go Owls, love the shirt. Yeah, Alouette shirt there. So thank you very much, my man Russ Landy up there as an executive with that team. So there you go, little cold pop. And more of your questions. It's live here on YouTube tonight. And I'm flying solo because everybody's on vacation. I'll be on vacation next month. Which one of these places doesn't match? I'm going to California, Las Vegas, and Casper, Wyoming during the month of July. So, yeah, Mom lives in Casper, though. So, anyway, we are going back to the chat room. And Fish Titty chimes in. Was just moved for the 106 and 206 in my 12-team Dino. So there you go, Fish Titty. Thank you for that username. And secondly, thank you for commenting on that. Josh chimes in. He says, I hear some promising news from Saints camp about Alvin Kamara. How do you rank him, Cease? And the Saints thing is interesting. Last night, I believe it was Courtney from her fantasy football that ended up taking Adrian Peterson before Mark Ingram. And Ingram went like a round later than that. This was somewhere in the 4th, 5th round, something like that. And Alvin Kamara in a PPR league was only 14 rounds. He went at near the very end. And it's something where with Kamara, he has some Edgerrin James to him. And you look at what he can do in between the tackles. He kind of runs blind in between the tackles, but he has great vision when it comes to outside. And as a receiver out of the backfield, when you get him outside in space, he's very dangerous. He was a noted touchdown hog at the University of Tennessee. So there's some interesting things to note there. And the Saints running back by committee, and make no mistake about it, it will be a committee, and it will be frustrating for fantasy owners. It's almost like I'd rather roll the dice on Kamara than Ingram and Peterson and owning both. You know, I'd rather take Kamara late as a flyer as he went in the draft I did last night. Just take him late and throw him in. There was 2 flexes in this league. So like deep league, second flex, whatever, throw him in and see what he can do, provided that we hear more about that pass catching ability. I know that Mark Ingram has been talking about getting even better as a receiver. We know that Adrian Peterson seemed kind of offended that people were saying he's not much of a receiver. Well, History will tell us that's been the case with that guy. And Ingram's a better receiver than people give him credit for. But Kamara is really dangerous because of the vision outside. He has no problem setting up defenders in space, and it just seems inside. He's intent running inside, and I've always given Kamara credit for that. And as I said, noted touchdown hog, but it just seems like he'll drop his head. He'll lower his head. He'll close his eyes a little bit. And when he's outside and he's in space and he's utilized as a receiver, he can make people miss. So with Kamara, late round flyer, that's what I would take him in a PPR league. What's his current average draft position? And we've got some running back things to discuss tonight as well, including some news out of San Francisco and some intel that I've picked up there about their opinion on Carlos Hyde. So things are shaping up here. It's a slow time. It is the vacation season, but it's that time to be thinking and picking up on all these little clues. Alvin Kamara is running back 57 right now at 1308 in 12-team PPR. So that sounds about right. That's about where he went last night. Goes right behind Darren Sproles. Now, what's interesting to note about Darren Sproles, listen, usually I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you about San Diego State Aztecs. Ronnie Hillman might have jaded me on that. But I will say this, DJ Pumphrey, Donnell Pumphrey, certainly playmaking back. But when I saw him at the Senior Bowl, it reminded me of Noel Devine, because Noel Devine was so small, they didn't even let him participate in pass protection drills. And Donnell Pumphrey measured in at 169 pounds. And that was about 10 pounds lighter than what most people expected him at. And when you saw him walk across the stage at the Senior Bowl, you saw there wasn't really much left. I mean, you couldn't really put more weight on his frame. So with Pumphrey, what's been really interesting, and again, this is minicamp buzz and talking to people out there that cover the team, Pumphrey's getting used a lot. Like, they are grooming him to take over for Darren Sproles eventually, and maybe sooner than some people think. Now, Sproles still can be effective, all those sorts of things, but when you're looking over the newswire or you're reading the Football Guys newsletter and you continue to see these constant stories from OTAs, from minicamp about Donnell Pumphrey, it makes you think, if I'm in a deep enough league, in a PPR league, certainly, and I've got the roster space. You know, I look in a PPR league last night, Samaje Perine, my motorboat rookie of the year, went early. He went before Rob Kelly in this draft that I did last night. And I waited until right before I took my defense and kicker. And I took Chris Thompson. I was like, this is a PPR league. Like, I love Perine. Rob Kelly's my dude. I seemed to talk to Lorenzo Doss every week about his former college teammate, Rob Kelly, this last season. But if you're in a PPR league, you, Chris Thompson in the, what was that, 12th round? Yes, please. All day. Chris Thompson is going behind Alvin Kamara in the 13th, end of the 13th round in average draft position right now. Devontae Booker is there as well at running back 60. Chris Thompson is running back 58. Interesting that we're discussing, how it's a Broncos show. People are still sleeping on Booker. A power gap system is more fit for his skill set than is the zone blocking system. And it's simple. A power gap doesn't give him any choices. In a power gap, Devontae Booker has to go down this lane. In a zone blocking system, he had to think and process and look for cutback lanes and be patient or not be patient. Usually he wasn't patient. He was running to the backs of his blockers. And that's why he looked bad last year. I think if you give him a clear-cut lane, which they will this year, he's a guy that is a great receiver out of the backfield. He's also a player that can be very swift between the tackles. It's all about C.J. Anderson, who's looking better than ever. We know he's got to stay healthy. I mean, the Broncos backfield, to me, the biggest mystery is where's Jamal Charles at? And there are people around the team that may think Charles might even make the team. So it's kind of a real big mystery right now because we have to see where Jamal Charles's knees are at. Remember that if you're looking at Devontae Booker, if everything's dried up and you're at the end of the draft and you're like, hell, Devontae Booker, just remember that. Remember that he's better in a power gap system, and remember that he's a better receiver than C.J. Anderson. C.J. Anderson is a very good receiver out of the backfield. Devontae Booker is a great receiver out of the backfield. Saw him connect with Paxton Lynch down the sidelines more than a couple of times at Broncos minicamps and OTAs. Not a complete Broncos show. Got a lot of thoughts to get to on other things, including what's going on in Seattle with some sort of timeshare But I'll get back to the chat room where you can react to me, and I'll be talking for another half hour, talking about fantasy football with you. Jason said, last year I thought I had a stud with Booker. He was a dud. Does he look better? Was last year what he is? I don't believe so, because of the fact of the power gap system, as I said. So glad that I got that comment in there about Devontae Booker. Just keep that. A lot of people sleeping on him, a lot of people down on him. Don't be that way, and pick him up late and perhaps have that pay off for you. Plank Melody says Cody Latimer, ? Cody makes plays in practice every day. Every day. Some of the biggest plays that I saw at Broncos OTAs when it wasn't Demaryius and it wasn't Emmanuel. And he's the third wide receiver right now, by the way. Carlos Henderson was sore the last couple of days of minicamp. And then the final day that he participated in minicamp a week ago, Tuesday, he wasn't good. I was disappointed in Carlos Henderson. Some drop passes. He didn't help out Paxton as much as he could. And Cody Latimer keeps making plays. I just think Cody is one of those guys. This is why practice and games, you got to weigh those two things. Cody Latimer is a June Pro Bowler. I think he may have to go to another team. Obviously, this probably his last year with Denver. He'll make the team because he plays special teams. But he's one of those guys when he goes to somewhere else, like Cordero Patterson, right? I'm picking up on Cordero Patterson, just trying to see if there's anything there now with the Raiders. Wherever Cody Latimer goes next year, deep dynasty leagues, sure, I'll pick him up because the talent's there. Guy's incredibly talented, can make crazy catches. Just wasn't a good fit with Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning kind of wrecked him. I'll say this as honestly and as straightforward as I can. I think Peyton Manning kind of wrecked him mentally, because you saw how Demaryius Thomas flourished with Peyton Manning, because Peyton is very, very demanding. When Cody came in as a rookie and Peyton's like very, very demanding, I don't think that set well with Cody. And I think it caused him to lose confidence. So the athleticism, the size, and the wingspan, the crazy catches, those are all there with Cody. It's just, well, get your confidence back, and you'll probably do that with a second team. It is the Audible rolling on. Cecil Lammy flying solo tonight. Appreciate everyone for jumping in here. What's this NBA draft? Everyone keeps talking. I love how cute the little NBA draft is. I'm going to go football snob here for you on a second, and just bear with me. And if you're a big NBA fan, well, I used to be back in the day, but it's just so cute how these little drafts operate. They're just such a little draft. Like the NFL, it's just massive coverage, 100,000, 250,000 people in Philadelphia or whatever. NBA draft, just this little event. Anyway, instead of talking about that bull, shut your mouth, I'll continue answering your questions. And Naresh says, please tell me you still got a man crush on CJ. Want to pick up for cheap, pairing both of the CJ Procise, and CJ Anderson. Yeah, told you about CJ. He rides his bicycle like 50 miles a day now. And, you know, he's being pushed. And there were people out there that, you know, are upset. We all would give our left nut to play in the NFL. Sorry, Joe, for talking about testicles, but let's just be honest. We all would give up whatever we had to play in the NFL. And I understand that some people take issue with guys that have to be pushed or guys that have to be motivated. Listen, CJ Anderson's plenty motivated. And yeah, he's getting pushed. He's getting pushed by Booker. He'll get pushed by Jamal Charles if Charles is healthy and makes the team. And that's something that he always responds. When he's pushed, when he's backed into a corner, he responds. And for whatever reason, there are times when he, you know, he's not as productive. I don't mind that a guy has to be pushed, because I know some people are like, why's he got to be pushed, man? What kind of pro you got to be pushed? I'm like, it's a production-based business. As a lot of players will tell you, it's a got-man league. So is Andrew Whitworth the prettiest tackle in the NFL? No, his game's pretty ugly. But you know what? He gets it done. It's a got-man league. Does CJ Anderson need to be pushed to be the best of his ability? Sure, if you want to say that. And it's fine. If he produces, that's fine. That's all that matters. CJ Procise is very interesting, because of the Seattle news item that came out today. I think it was Bob Condata from the Seattle Times. And if I mispronounce your name, we'll get in line. And I've reached out to some Seattle people just to kind of get a feel, and I'll get updates and, of course, be talking about it nonstop on this program. But the report out today, like Thomas Rawls and Eddie Lacy could be in a shared committee. And it's the dreaded hot hand approach, and it sucks and it's terrible. Everyone hates the hot hand because you can't really know, is Eddie Lacy going to be the hot hand, or is Thomas Rawls going to be the hot hand, what have you. And there sits ProSize. It's almost like the Kamara talk that we just had. You know what I mean? It's like, it's Mark Ingram, it's Adrian Peterson, and then there's the kid sitting back there, and then there's ProSize in Seattle. And I really like Alex Collins as well from a dynasty perspective. But on ProSize specifically, if I'm in a PPR league, and I'm looking, as I said, I like to do that digging late. Give me your Chris Thompsons. Give me your DJ Humphries if he continues to have that, good discussion about his game as it works out there in Eagles camp. Give me those change of pace backs, and I'll take a chance on that late in a draft. And we go, okay, where's ProSize going? Running back 38. So that's 809 and 12-team PPR. And that is second to Eddie Lacy, who is next up at running back 25 at 512. And I do not believe Rawls is getting drafted. Well, no, he's right there, running back 48. So you've got running back 48. You have running back 25. Those are your two guys that are splitting carries. And then you've got ProSize. And ProSize is sitting there at running back 38. So he kind of splits the middle there. Well, maybe Rawls takes a little bit more from Lacy, but maybe that role for ProSize, if you can get a Danny Woodhead-like role, and this is what I've said about Jamal Charles. Jamal Charles thinks he's going to be the man, thinks he can still be the man, was pissed off when I asked him about it, and it was salty, like, they fired me, man. Well, if Jamal Charles is kind of what he used to be, he's Danny Woodhead, and if you can get a guy in a PPR league that's going to catch 80 passes, you're fine. You can flex that guy in deep leagues, in PPR leagues, with ProSize. I feel the same way. And ProSize is a better runner. He's an all-purpose guy, of course, converted wide receiver. So his receiving skill is there. He's got that run after the catch ability. And he's one of those sneaky flex plays. And he's going around Latavius Murray. Now, I've got Latavius Murray on my Mutt team because there was some Mutt card that was like 95 Latavius Murray. It was cheap in the auction house. And yes, I play the hell out of Madden on Xbox Live. Username is Grimjack1977. Just send me a message. I'm playing late at night. Anyway, so I'll pick up Latavius Murray on my Madden Ultimate team. I don't want Latavius Murray on my fantasy team. And at that price tag, Samaje Perine's going right in front of him. Now it is PPR league, and I love Perine, so I would prefer Perine there. But ProSize is right there. Kareem Hunt is right there. I got Kareem Hunt in that league last night. My running back's a little bit light, but I thought, look at the Spencer Ware situation. And a note for everybody out there on this KC thing, and Andy Reid getting the extension, congratulations to him. Just everyone try to find who Pat Mahomes warms up to, because if it's around fantasy playoff time, and it depends on record, and if Kansas City's undefeated, they're not going to bench Alex Smith, all those sorts of things. We know this, but you need to be prepared for when the gear is shifted to Pat Mahomes. If, in fact, that happens this year, which I've been told that is a distinct possibility. So if he's preferring, and man, he's using Kareem Hunt a lot out of the backfield, you watch the preseason, you get the reports, and, of course, Adam Teicher, there's no better Chiefs writer than that guy. So, you follow the conversation, and this is where it's early, but I took Kareem Hunt last night. I was very happy. I was over the moon about that. Now, ProSize was already gone, if memory serves, but I would rather take a chance on those type of guys, your Kareem Hunts, your CJ ProSizes, rather than go with Latavius Murray, when we know that Dalvin Cook's probably the guy to emerge there eventually. He's got to stay out of trouble. He's got to hang on to the rock. So with me, I'm excited if I'm able to scoop up ProSize, let's say in the 9th round. 8th round, 809 is where he's going right now. So that's something where if you like him, like I do, 8th round, go ahead and pull that trigger. Back to the chat room, and you are reacting to me. And I'm talking so much, I've barely drank this, so I'm going to drink a little bit more. And you guys are going to ask me questions. Jacob has something here, and I was looking for Paul Perkins last night in this draft, because, again, I went wide receiver heavy. It's a PPR league with 2 flexes, and you start 2 wide receivers. And it was only 4 points for a touchdown pass. So I was like, I'm going to load up on wide receivers. And I did. I got Michael Thomas and Amari Cooper and Alshon Jeffrey and Randall Cobb and a bunch of other ones. I have a great group of wide receivers, but my running backs were a little bit thin. I had Marshawn Lynch as my top back. I believe I got him in the 4th round. I was right there at the turn, so I went 3 wide receivers and then Marshawn as my first back. But I was looking for Paul Perkins to come back around to me at the end of the 5th, and he didn't. He went in the middle of the 5th. And Jacob 2680 Moses says, what should we make of Perkins being a 5th round pick in a shallow running back draft and Gallman a 4th round pick in a deep running back draft? Well, what's interesting about Wayne Gallman is that you look at his game and he's the grinder. He is the type of player where he's not going to be the featured back. He's not going to be the lead ball carrier. He is the type of back that has burst, that has uses his shoulders as striking pads, all those sorts of things. The problem that I have always had with Wayne Gallman is his stride. He's a long strider, and those long striders usually can trip him up easily. And that's something at the pro level. Is he going to, use those shoulders even more? How does that affect his stride? All those sorts of things. I was looking for Paul Perkins specifically because he's always reminded me of a poor man's version of Jamal Charles. Not Jamal Charles, salty old man now, but old Jamal Charles. And that is a poor man's version, but an exciting player. And when I look at this Giants team, and I was looking at 3 wide receiver sets. I was looking at some advanced data about 3 wide receiver sets and about shotgun formations. I'm doing some studying on Mike McCoy's offense. I'm writing some stuff about the Broncos. But I was just looking overall generally at the NFL, and I was looking at how quarterbacks, it came from an article today that's going to be in our Football Guys newsletter tonight about does Eli Manning have something left in the tank? And so I was looking at the Giants offense specifically, looking at projections for Brandon Marshall. We all know Odell Beckham Jr. is going to do his thing, but what fits them best for what they want to do is the fast break back like Paul Perkins. Now, Perkins, at the time I was targeting him, again, with Marshawn Lynch as my number 1 back, was targeting Perkins in a PPR, and I know I'm going to have to play the waiver wire, so I know my running backs were weak, but my quarterback and tight end and wide receivers were incredibly strong, and I'll take that. I'll take the position that's banged up the most and work the waiver wire for that. But I like Perkins' game, and looking at the advanced data today, because I drafted last night, but in looking at the advanced data today, I really like the setup there with Ingram, with Marshall running drag routes, with Odell Beckham Jr. doing his thing, and Perkins having a clean box. And if I have to say sorry, Joe, for that, then whatever, but that's what you'll have. You're not going to have a cluttered, cramped box with the Giants because you have so many things to worry about in the passing game. You're going to have to play basically a cloud formation just so you can deal with Marshall and Beckham and Ingram, and that gives Perkins wide rushing range. He has the speed. He's got sweet feet to take advantage of that. So for me, in a draft with other fantasy experts, I was looking for Perkins as running backs were going off, and I wanted wide receivers in that format, and I wanted to flex wide receivers in that format. You couldn't flex tight ends in this league. I made the commitment to be like, all right, I'm going to get Marshawn, and then I'm going to try to work in Paul Perkins. I wasn't able to get him, and I can't remember right now who my second running back is, but I like him, and I like target him around his average draft position right now, I think is very accurate. This one from Michael says, Cecil, what are your thoughts on super flex leagues, and how would that change your draft strategy? Know your scoring in lineup. And in a super flex league, when you've got, and this one was 2 flexes, and I wanted to kind of corner the market on wide receivers. So it does change your strategy. And I will say this, I was sitting at the turn in a 12-team league, which I love. I was at number 12. It's exactly what I wanted. And I got that number. We drew numbers out of a bag. I would, if it would have been 6 points for a touchdown pass, then I would have went wide receiver quarterback. But because it was 2 flexes and start 3 wide receivers, I'm like, I'm just going to start the 5 best wide receivers I can every single week. And that's what I did. So the super flex always will change that in terms of what position do you want to corner the market on, and then go for it. And I feel more comfortable, and I know we've seen wide receivers, quote unquote, come out of nowhere. I know we've seen the surge of wide receivers or guys that you didn't draft and all of a sudden you pick them up and they pay off. But for me, I just like going and playing the waiver wire lottery on running backs because it's such a volatile position and there's so many injuries and so many running back by committees and so many hot hand approaches, while other guys are like, yeah, I got Eddie Lacy. And I'm like, I'll just go pick up Randall Cobb, and that's just the way that I feel about that position today. If you're at the top of the draft and you can get David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, we all know that story. But to me, it's more about what's the scoring like, how many flexes do I get, what position do I want to corner the market on. Last night, I wanted wide receivers. I did just that. Tammy chimes in, Saints running backs, draft values, and PPR. I discussed that a little bit earlier and how Kamara is a guy that I am targeting late in drafts. Josh says, you're the king, good sir. No, you good sir. Jason says, Carlos Hyde, ? Do tell. And I'll toss this around with the fellas when we're all back from vacation, but I want to say this. There are just things you learn and kind of clues that you pick up on. Carlos Hyde's in the last year of his deal. And Carlos Hyde is a player that, when he's healthy, he's shown some things, but he struggles to stay healthy. We know this Bobby Turner, Kyle Shanahan system can be very, very, very running back friendly, like very running back friendly. And if there was better clarity at the position, then you bet your ass I would be targeting a 49ers back. And if that was Carlos Hyde, then that's what I would be doing. Now, I really believe in John Lynch. I really believe in Adam Peters. I know John a little bit. I know Adam a little bit, Kyle a little bit. But in knowing just the structure of that team and how they're put together, I will also, this is a programming note, because we're going to have our preseason watch list coming out in late July and into August. The second week of August, the Broncos travel to Santa Clara to practice against the 49ers. I'm going to have better information for you then. But just know this. The biggest player to come out and biggest running back is Matt Breida. Breida, whatever, has been the highlight player there. More so than Joe Williams, although we all know the story about Joe Williams and how, Kyle Shanahan did the research, kind of went to bat for him there as well. So whereas Carlos Hyde, and I believe he went in the 5th round of the draft last night, and I even said after he was picked, I was like, I said, they don't like him. And the guy that drafted him, good friend of mine, he was like, let me check. And he checked with some guys, some top NFL insiders, and he was like, hey, you're right. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So whereas Carlos Hyde's going off at running back 19, 408, I just want you all to watch this situation closely. We know it can be valuable. And Carlos Hyde's going in front of Doug Martin, in front of Adrian Peterson, in front of CJ Anderson, in front of Tevin Coleman, and in front of Amir Abdullah. I would take all of those guys before him. Ty Montgomery is the running back drafted at running back 18. So right before where Carlos Hyde is going. I like Jamal Williams, but I'd way take Ty Montgomery over Carlos Hyde. It's not even close. So I want everyone to watch the situation as it unfolds. I'm going to Santa Clara for the second week, all week long for the preseason. I'll be at the second preseason game, Broncos 49ers. I'll have better information at the time. I'll have more personal, hands-on, boots on the ground information there as well. But just know this, there are other backs there that get the coaches excited more. I think that's the best way to put it. And maybe saying they don't like him is a little bit harsh, but just know that we might not be talking about Carlos Hyde as the, 49ers stud running back. It could be somebody else, could be Breida, could be Williams there as well. So back to the chat room, and we will get back to it. Josh is like, I'm curious about why the 49ers are down on Hyde. I think for me, it comes down to fit in that system. And know this about that system. I want to be very clear about that system. It takes some time to learn how to be a good back in a zone blocking system. I've talked to CJ Anderson about this. In a zone blocking system, because of the patience that's required, and you really have to trust your offensive line. And, you have to have a quarterback that's going to pull the backside defender. If your play's going to the right, your quarterback has to hand off and then roll out, and that backside defender has to go with him, or he can go straight down the line and tackle you. Used to drive me crazy when people would say CJ Anderson doesn't have any vision, when it was always backside defenders going to tackle him for a 2-yard gain. It's like, there's not vision if a guy behind you is grabbing your ankles. So there's multiple things here, and the 49ers are a long ways away from being a finished product. But for me with Hyde, just know, unless you're more of an electric runner, and Breida is that, Williams is perhaps more of a slashing, instinctive runner than Hyde. And Hyde has some good physical attributes. But again, it's fit. What did I say about Devontae Booker? You know, you look at Booker, he's a swift runner. He has some power. He uses shoulders as striking pads, you know. So there's some good things with Booker. He looked like trash. He looked like garbage last year. Why? Because as a zone blocker, it takes time. CJ Anderson had to learn to become a good zone runner. He's a great power gap runner. He looks more comfortable. He breaking off all these big runs at practice. So for me, and knowing that system and knowing that staff a little bit, and I look at Hyde's skill set, I can see why other guys would get them excited. And I can see why other guys, whether it's Breida or Williams, etc., would get that excited. Now, Hyde could turn it around and be great in the preseason, all that. But just know this, as we sit here at the end of June, the 49ers running back is not as clear as people are making it out to be. So I'm not touching Hyde at his current average draft position. Fantasy Fellowship. Hey, what's up, dude? He says Terrell Pryor working out with downtown Antonio Brown again, peeking into the 3rd round of drafts now with Derek Carr wrapped up. And congratulations to Derek Carr. Congratulations to Reggie McKenzie. What's funny about Reggie is the first couple years on the job, you'd see him out on the All-Star road trip, and you know, it's like he's kind of hiding a little bit. And then once they get Derek Carr, like Reggie's got a chest out. He's all pumped up. He's walking around. His head is held high. Like, of course you should be confident. You just found a franchise quarterback, and you got to pay the guy. So now next up is Cousins and Stafford. We'll see when that goes down and when those two can get their play. But if we look now at Terrell Pryor, because I bring up Cousins there, as now they're going to pay him. Speaking of the 49ers would have fallen all over themselves if there was any way they could get Cousins next year. They'd fall all over themselves to do it. As we sit right now, you're looking at a 49ers team that maybe is in play for Sam Darnold or Josh Allen, Wyoming Cowboys, baby, Josh Rosen. Those are the 3 top quarterbacks for next year's draft. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Terrell Pryor now 312, end of the 3rd round, wide receiver 18. Now he's right behind Demaryius Thomas. And Kirk Cousins is better than Trevor Siemian. That's not saying much. And Kirk Cousins is better than Paxton Lynch, although you could argue Lynch's upside. But I feel way better about Demaryius Thomas because of that system in place and because how he's got his play back and highlighted. So Alshon Jeffrey, Demaryius Thomas, Terrell Pryor, Jarvis Landry. That's the 4 in order at the end of the 3rd round. Landry's actually at the beginning of the 4th. For me, I would actually go in that order, especially if it's got some sort of touchdown bonus, because Landry just doesn't get those touchdowns. So I think that's accurate. If he climbs much higher, let's say he starts going mid-3rd round, we're talking Keenan Allen territory, Allen Robinson territory, I'm not as high on that. So I think it's fair where he's going right now. If he creeps up a little bit higher, I probably would, pass and try to get a Marius a little bit later, Alshon Jeffrey, etc. And the chat room is back in action and talking about a Broncos tight end. Well, they think it's AJ Derby, but it's probably not. It's Jake Butt when he's healthy. But with Jake Butt, we have to see what's going on with the knee injury. How healthy can he be? Does he miss half the year? Listen, dynasty love for Jake Butt. Redraft, I don't really want AJ Derby, Jeff Hireman. I don't want any of those guys. So, and Virgil Green's just a blocker. And, if there's a surprise cut in Broncos camp, it might be Virgil Green. I don't think it will be, but based on his salary, there's $2.5 million they could free up. They're not in salary cap trouble, but that's just kind of the the thing there. It's not the place to look for tight ends. Mike McCoy, and this is where the third option is going to come into play. And that's where that the Danny Woodhead role is going to be big in Mike McCoy's offense in Denver because they don't have a tight end. And that third asset, whether it is Carlos Henderson, God bless if it's ever Cody Latimer. I'm not ever going to talk about him again until he does something in a game besides drop passes. The third asset, it's going to be a lot of Demarius. Sanders is going to get his. Let's just put it at 85 catches for Emmanuel. Let's put it at 100 catches for Demarius. I think that's fair projections for both. The third asset's got to come from somewhere, and I don't think it's coming from A.J. Derby. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he actually does a little bit more, and he was showing good chemistry with Paxton. Hireman did show a little bit better chemistry there as well. Curious, it was after Derby was banged up. And that's another thing with Derby, with Hireman too. It's like, these little nagging injuries, I don't care if it's June. You can't be missing practice. Arturo says, is the quarterback competition really 50-50? It's not Paxton's jobs to lose. I think that Arturo is right. I think it is Paxton's job to lose. I think they opened this competition just to see where Paxton's at. They didn't open this competition, and it's not Trevor's job to lose, as some people have painted it, because Trevor Siemian is, well, he's painfully average, and he's a below average quarterback based on film and stats last year. But he's also one of those guys. There's Mike Glennon money floating around out there for someone all the time. And if Trevor Siemian doesn't play it down for 2 years, somebody will probably pay him $12 million a year when he hits the open market. So, from that perspective, where's the financial incentive go? The financial incentives goes to the guy that you have a fifth-year option on. And if you want to keep this defense together, you better hope. And I said this today on Stokely and Zach, on Brandon Stokely's show here locally on 104.3 The Fan. I said the best thing for the Broncos is to have Paxton Lynch work out. I don't care if you're a big Trevor fan, and this is so bizarre. The Tuesday of minicamp, I ended my show. It was going into Wednesday, sorry. Ended my show. I was like, I'm going out to Broncos, so excited. Second day of minicamp, blah, blah. And I had a guy, first time this ever happened, I had a guy waiting for me in the parking lot to yell at me because I didn't say nice things about Trevor. It was very bizarre, very odd. Not necessarily scary, but in today's day and age, who the hell knows? But it was just really weird because the guy was like, you need to talk good about Trevor. You don't say anything good about Trevor. And I was like, he looks like he did last year. What do you want me to say? You want me to lie and be like, Trevor's amazing? Like, no, if it's a 5-yard throw, Trevor Siemian's your guy. He's better than Paxton Lynch at the 5-yard throws. Problem is, he doesn't go much further down than that. So I do believe Arturo that it is Paxton Lynch's job. I'm a effing problem, says, can the Broncos make it through the season with this ILB crew and be successful? You'll have a clean Todd Davis. And what I mean by that is whether it's Damata Pecco or Tyreek Jarrett, they're going to keep the linebackers clean instead of Sylvester Williams getting put on roller skates and getting pushed back into you and never commanding a double team. That'll be different with Pecco there. That'll be different with Tyreek Jarrett there if he makes the team. Tyreek Jarrett's the size of an SUV. Not a small one either. Not a crossover, an actual SUV. So that'll help Todd Davis play a little bit cleaner. More questions. Jason says, will Carlos Henderson have a punt return or kick return impact for the Broncos? He could. Isaiah McKenzie's also going to play into that as well. So make sure to watch out for that. How does that McKenzie thing roll on? McKenzie, they're going to have a package of plays for. They should have a package of plays for, in my opinion. He's not Trenton Holiday, but he's a guy you could run a jet sweep with, all those sorts of things. And then Carlos Henderson, if he doesn't disappoint like he did at minicamp, and he wasn't sore either, then he'll have a role there as a returner and the third asset there. Arturo asked if I asked Cody why he doesn't show up on Sundays. We've talked about it a little bit, and Cody's a real nice kid, and he never really had like a great answer, or wasn't like I was rattled or whatever. It's just me speculating, knowing him and knowing how he looks all the time in practice. He looks great, and he doesn't do anything on Sundays. Aha! Tom Tekmansky says pick 2 for PPR Dynasty: Alshon Jeffrey, Dante Moncrief, or Devontae Adams. You get points for drops. I can never get the pictures of Devontae Adams talking about Derek Carr dropping passes at Fresno State. So for me, Moncrief there. Watch out for little Chester Rogers, who may win that third job over Kamar Aiken and Philip Dorsett, the first round bust. But certainly Alshon Jeffrey with my man Carson Wentz, Dante Moncrief there as well over Devontae Adams. Fish Titty's back. He says, any thoughts on Doxton or Treadwell this season? What's interesting about Doxton is he has the opportunity. He has the ability there. He was a player that was targeted heavily. He's had that heavy target rotation. It's not foreign to him. It's not something he'll be uncomfortable with. And in fact, he kind of craves that. He kind of wants that. That's a great unknown for me. And I'm looking for his current average draft position. Wide receiver 56. So it's 1207. And he's going around John Ross, Cole Beasley, Kevin White, Sterling Shepard. I would rather have John Ross in that situation. I would rather have Kevin White in that situation, depending on, how your scoring system is. Is it a PPR? Is there big play bonuses? White would be in play if it's a big play bonus. Doxton, very curious. I'm comfortable with that ADP, but there is, if I've got a choice of John Ross or Josh Doxton, I'm going to take John Ross there. By the way, Robert Woods, as I'm looking at average draft position here, Robert Woods is going a little bit behind that. Him and Tavon Austin, wide receiver 60 and wide receiver 61. I'm still looking for Cooper Kupp, who's wide receiver 65. So there's kind of a log jam of LA Rams wide receivers there. Put my chips in Kupp, on Kupp. I know there's a one Kupp reference in there somewhere that'll make Joe mad at me. So I'll move on from that. But that's what I would look for. Arturo says, what's your gamer tag? I play MUD on Xbox 1, 2. Let's get a game. It is Grimjack 1977. Yes, I am old. And if anyone knows who Grimjack is, congratulations. You're a comic book dork. Any tips for someone who wants to start playing fantasy football? Just jump right in. Jump in. If you want to start with daily fantasy, do it. But find a group of coworkers. I mean, here's the thing, and there was been some recent numbers out. We were talking about this at the fantasy draft last night. The fantasy community, even with the surge and the boost of DFS from a couple years ago, it's not plateaued. And I'll get the comments sometimes, maybe from the guys that want to show up at Broncos camp and yell at me. I'll get the comments sometime like, oh, fantasy dork thinks his shut your mouth doesn't stink. Actually, it's people that don't play fantasy that are the dorks now. Like anytime I hear that, oh, you're just a fantasy dork. Oh, God. Wait, you don't play fantasy football? So let me guess, you're real popular. Everybody plays fantasy football. If someone wants to get into it, just do it. Find some friends, find some coworkers, go anonymous and play in some random league. Just get used to it and have fun with it. That's the main thing. This is why we do this. Why are we sitting here on a Thursday night thinking about fantasy football when, we could be doing a million other things? Well, because we have fun with it. So just have fun with fantasy football. The people that, either put too much money into it that they can't afford, or that, play in too many leagues, or that get obsessive about it. Like, yeah, that's cool. You obsess over fantasy football. How about you just have fun? How about you have fun and, let's talk some football. Knowing fantasy football is just knowing football. That's all it is. So there you have it. Andrew says, drink plenty of Fat Tire. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Funny story. Back in the 90s, because, everybody tells me that I'm stuck in the 90s because I wear Jordans all the time. And I love 90s basketball, not today's basketball so much. Anyway, the guy who started Fat Tire in Fort Collins, I lived in Fort Collins. I worked in a gas station up by Beaver's Market. There's a lot of jokes in there on that, off Shields and Mountain. And he would come in to buy cigarettes. And I remember this was in the 90s. And I was like, you get in the conversation. It's a regular customer. You're like, what do you do? And he was like, oh, I got started this microbrew. And it was a Fort Collins thing. So it was like, oh, you're New Belgium. Okay, got it. Yeah, I got a Fat Tire. And now his ex-wife owns the company. But the guy that started Fat Tire, I used to sell cigarettes to back in the 90s at the gas station that I worked at. There's a boring piece of trivia for you. Steve D says, year of Deshaun Jackson, year of Jameis Winston. I had a choice last night. I'm going a little bit over tonight, but whatever. Let's have some fun, right? Last night's draft, I'm sitting there in the 7th round. I even told everybody, I was like, I'm going to take a quarterback in the 7th round. I'm not going to take one before then. I'll call my shot, you know? And in that league, it was 4 points for a touchdown pass. So I got Ben Roethlisberger in the 7th. His ADP is 807. If by somehow, some way, someone would have sniped Ben Roethlisberger from me, I was ready, willing, able to take Jameis Winston. It's the year of Deshaun Jackson, but it's the year of Jameis. Now, I don't know how the tight ends are going to work out. I'll check in with my man Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report. They do great work down there in Tampa. And I'll check in with my dudes, you know, Charlie Campbell, all those guys down in Tampa, and the people on the team that I know. I'll check in with those guys, and we'll figure it out. So right now, like, can O.J. Howard do anything if he's not playing Clemson? Because he didn't in college. I know. Redshirt freshman quarterback and blah, 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 blah. Or true freshman, whatever it was, at Alabama. And it's going to be interesting with Cameron Brate, how that works. But listen, Doug Martin, 6 minutes, Dougie Fresh, and you're on. He's been looking real good and real motivated, and they won't have him for 3 weeks, and they don't need to even run the ball with Jameis there slinging it. So I love the idea of Jameis Winston. He's got a current ADP of 904. He's quarterback 11 right now. If Jameis Winston fit into the top 7, dare I say top 5 at the end of the year, I'm not surprised. Because your top 5 quarterbacks are Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck. Well, what's Ryan going to be like without Kyle Shanahan? You know, is Luck protected enough? That's a large question mark. And I think the Colts, if I'm a Colts fan, I'm actually personally offended by their lack of putting enough around Andrew Luck, the greatest young quarterback in the league, and they're not putting enough around him. Anyway, so if Jameis goes from quarterback 11, he finishes as a top 5 fantasy quarterback, don't be surprised because of what they've put around him and just because of his skill set. So that's an awesome thing to think about. And Plank Melody talks about Bobby Turner finding late round gems for sure in San Francisco. Found one in Denver. He's going to the Hall of Fame this year. It's my man, Terrell Davis. I got to talk to TD a week ago. He came out to Denver. Love that guy. That is my dude. I love Terrell Davis. So happy to see him get into the Hall of Fame. Looks like a couple more questions here before we wrap it up. Josh says, what's your average draft position for Leonard Fournette? Now, there are people that I've talked to that are down on Leonard Fournette. I'm an LSU Hawk, so I'm not down on him. I'm curious how things are going to work out in Jacksonville, but I know this. You're going to see 100 fewer passing attempts for Blake Bortles. That's because, one, Blake Bortles is a slappy. You want to make sure that he's not throwing interceptions. The stuff that I know about Bortles, I'll just say this. I hope he has a better dedication to the game this offseason. Because it's not vacation time all the time, buddy. You actually have to put in the work. And from his embarrassing performance last year, maybe Blake Bortles got it. And if he did, then good for him. Maybe there's something there. Grandpa Coughlin will keep the Werther's original away from him. But with Leonard Fournette, Fournette's going at running back 11, 209. He actually went before I took Marshawn Lynch. But I got Marshawn Lynch, remember, in the 4th round at the turn at 401. I got Marshawn Lynch. So Fournette was gone by that time in this draft that I did last night. Jordan Howard was gone. The guys around him, Todd Gurley was gone. Lamar Miller was gone. By the way, Lamar Miller, fewer touches. I know that story came out, and I commented on our Football Guys newsletter and our Football Guys newswire. I comment on that. Sigmund Bloom comments on those. Andrew Garda, and Joe Bryant. So make sure to check us out, our newswire, and check out our newsletter. But the fewer touches for Lamar Miller thing, he can be as productive or more productive on fewer touches if he's used efficiently and used the right way. And I'm very excited by Deshaun Watson in that offense, and excited by young guys like Will Fuller learning more, young guys like Braxton Miller learning more. By the way, nice 96 mutt Braxton Miller 2 weeks ago. Finally, Isaiah Crowell. I wanted to talk about him a little bit tonight. I wanted to get to Spencer Ware too. That's on my Kareem Hunt love there. With Isaiah Crowell, listen, Cleveland doesn't do a lot of things right. Matt Waldman, lifetime Cleveland Browns fan, will tell you they don't do a lot of things right. I do, though, appreciate what they've done on the offensive line. And while I'm not a big fan of Deshaun Kaiser, who I think is a poor man's version of Dante Culpepper, and he does this too much when he goes to throw. I'm throwing here. Yes, right there. Stop with the pump. Stop. Anyway, what I do like is how they've built the offensive line and how they'll have that commitment to the run. So Isaiah Crowell, for me, if there's a choice of him or Spencer Ware, which came up last night in the draft, I mean, it's Crowell. It's 10 times out of 10. I am very shy, and I will check in with my KC guys because I'm getting a lot of good stuff there. And again, congratulations to Andy Reid. I'll check in with my KC guys, but I'm just a little iffy on Spencer Ware at running back 17 at 406. I talked about Carlos Hyde a little bit earlier. In fact, Carlos Hyde is running back 19 at 408. So there's two of those kind of danger, Will Robinson. Those two backs for me fit in that, like, I'm going to let somebody else take him. And hey, if Spencer Ware has a great year, awesome. If Carlos Hyde blows it up, great. I don't think he will. But anyway, that's kind of that. Let other guys take him. I would rather have in a PPR league a Christian McCaffrey, a Joe Mixon, a Ty Montgomery there, a CJ Anderson there, more so than Spencer Ware and Carlos Hyde. So that's kind of my parting shot, my warning shot for you this evening. It is the Audible Live, tying a bow on tonight's program. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And thanks for putting up with my nonsensical stories about Fat Tire. Anyway, as always, make sure to follow the Audible on Twitter at the Audible. Thanks for subscribing to this YouTube channel. We don't really promote this YouTube channel, although we should. And I love doing the video shows, and it's awesome to get the chat room going. I love the chat room, so thank you guys for that. And thank you for subscribing on YouTube, and check us out there. Click the like button down below to make sure that you like it. Who's the guy that doesn't like them? There's always like one. We'll get like a handful of likes, and then there's like one don't like. It's like, go on, buddy. Get out of here. Anyway, appreciate you all. We get to play in the sandbox of life, by the way. And as we often say on this show, we're playing fantasy football, and we're in a pretty good spot compared to where others are, where we can be. So everyone take the time out, make sure you appreciate everything. I appreciate you. I appreciate this show. And as always, stay tuned and stay frosty.